What if you could have unlimited power, riches, and a whole kingdom, or could turn back time 90 years and be youthful again? Of course, there's a cost. You'd need to swap your skin with either an ancient queen's or a rough shepherd's. Would you do it? In this twisted old tale, we get much deeper than skin deep into this very question. So, friends and fiends, get comfy and cozy, summon your familiars, grab a mug of your favorite tea, and follow me. Once upon a time, there was a queen so old and ugly, so bent down under the weight of years in infirmaries that she grew weary of life, unless her youth could be renewed to her. A fairy who had been present at her birth now paid the queen a visit and told her that if she could find a young girl willing to change places with her majesty, to give her bloom and youth in exchange for the queen's old age and scepter, then the fairy, by one wave of her wand, would fulfill their desire. The queen was delighted, for she would much rather be poor, young, and healthy than a rich queen who was too old and infirm to enjoy life. She therefore ordered the strictest search to be made throughout her domains for a young girl who would be willing to give her youth in exchange for age, infirmaries, and riches. It was not long before several discontented and ambitious girls came to accept the offer. But when they saw how feeble and helpless the old queen was, how she could eat nothing but gruels and soups, how wrinkled and withered she was, and how many times she said over the same thing, and how she tottered and bent double over her cane, they said they preferred their own conditions, poor and humble as they were, to the riches and the 100 years of her majesty. Afterwards, there came some persons of a still more ambitious nature. To these the queen promised grand titles and high honors. At first, they were very willing, but when they had stayed a short time with her majesty, they left the room shaking their heads and saying, "Of what use would all the queen's possesses be to us, since we should then be so disfigured and so ugly that we should be ashamed to show ourselves to anyone?" Now for myself, I feel like getting old is in its own way a privilege, and yes, there are wrinkles and infirmaries and repeat questions, but it's also the sign of a life lived and luck. But back to the story. At length, a young maiden from a country village presented herself. She was exceedingly beautiful and declared herself willing to accept the crown in exchange for her youth. Her name was Peronella. At first, the queen was very angry at her presumption, for the girl was very poor. But after all, what did that matter when the queen's purpose was to grow young again? She proposed to Peronella to divide the kingdom with her. Now, I think the queen is getting quite picky. Says she, "You shall have one half and I the other. Surely that is enough for you, who are but a poor country girl." "No," replied Peronella, "that will not satisfy me at all. I will have the whole, or I will remain a country girl, strong and beautiful and active, while you keep your wrinkles and your 100 years. "But," said the queen, "what shall I do if I give away my whole kingdom?" "Do?" said Peronella. "Your majesty will laugh and dance and sing as I do." And she laughed and danced and sung before her. The queen, who could do nothing like this, asked Peronella how she would amuse herself if she were queen, for she knew nothing of all the infirmaries of age. "I really cannot be quite sure what I would do," answered Peronella, "but I have a great mind to try the experiment, for everyone says it is such a fine thing to be a queen." While the queen and Peronella were coming to agreement, the fairy entered the room and said to the country girl, "Are you willing to make the trial and see what it is like to be queen, extremely rich and 100 years old?" "I have no objection," said Peronella. In a single instant, her skin became wrinkled Her hair turned gray, her teeth dropped out, her back was bent double, and she felt herself become helpless and crippled and ill-natured. She was already 100 years old. The fairy touched a bell, and a crowd of officers and courtiers trooped in, all richly dressed, to do homage to the queen and fulfill her will. A sumptuous repast was set before her, but she did not have the least appetite, and besides, she could eat nothing but soups and gruels. She did not know what to say or how to behave, and was ashamed of the figure she must be making, especially as she sat where she could see herself in a looking glass and know all the time how very ugly she was. In the meanwhile, the real queen stood in a corner, smiling all the time to see how fresh and comely she had become. Her hair was beautiful, her skin was soft and rosy, her teeth were white and firm, and her figure was strong and tall. She could skip about as nimbly as a deer, but she was dressed in a coarse, rough, short petticoat, and her cap and apron were poor and torn. She scarcely dared move in such clothes as these, and the guards, who never allowed such countrified, ragged-looking people within the palace gates, pushed her about with the greatest rudeness. Peronella, who was watching her, now said, "I see it is quite dreadful to you not to be queen, and it is still more so to me to be one. Pray, take your crown again and give me my ragged petticoat." The change was immediately made. The queen grew old again, and Peronella was as young and blooming as she had ever been before. Hardly had this taken place when each began to repent of her haste and to wish she had tried a little longer, but it was now too late. The fairy required them to remain forever in their own conditions. The queen cried all day long over her aches and pains, saying, "Alas, if I were but Peronella, I should, it is true, sleep in a poor cottage and live on potatoes. But I should dance with the shepherds under a shady elm to the music of a flute. Of what use is a bed of down to me, since it gains me neither sleep nor ease, or so many attendants, since they cannot make me comfortable?" So the queen's fretfulness increased her pain, nor could the 12 physicians who constantly attended her be of the least service. She died about 2 months later. Peronella was dancing with her companions on the fresh grass by the side of a flowing stream when the news of the queen's death reached her. She said to them, "How fortunate I was in preferring my own humble lot to that of the queen." Shortly after, Peronella was wooed by 3 suitors who wanted to marry her. One was an old man, peevish and cross, a man of high distinction but so jealous that he would never let her out of his sight. The second was handsome and of a good family, but improvident and wasteful. He would be careless of his wife's comfort. The third was a young shepherd of her own rank, who loved her dearly and could give her a good, simple home in her own pretty village. Peronella was tempted by the riches of the first and the good looks and promises of the second, but she remembered how miserable she had been as queen. She married the shepherd, and they lived a simple, happy life for many, many long years. Thank you, friends and fiends, for listening to this fairy tale, Peronella, which explores the complexities of aging and the convenience of youth. While at first it's easy to see this as very critical of old age, calling it ugly or forgetful, I do think there's a beauty in it, and I feel like this story honors each stage of life. Both women wanted to go back to their former lives. Even though she was miserable, the queen was used to acting a certain way. The longer anyone lives, the more set in their ways they become. And while painful, it is familiar. I'm sorry she was uncomfortable, but she did get to be herself at the end. And for Peronella, it sort of seems like it was just a fun experiment to play at being queen. And the experiment served her well for her choice of suitors. By swapping skins, each woman got to be themselves in the end. So I do think this was a happily ever after fairy tale. And now that we've reached the end of it, I'd like to tell you about my newest story, out now. Some would do anything for love. Others wouldn't do that. This twisted old tale pushes the limits of what one would do for love, even if it's not their own. And there are quite a lot of poetic tears along the way. And you can dive into it right now on Nebula First before it's out on YouTube. I release all of my stories early on Nebula First, and you can find all of my past stories, ASMR videos, and growing library of podcast episodes ad-free on Nebula as well. And if you love stories and podcasts, you'll really want to check out the Sojourn audio drama. With humanity on the brink of collapse, a desperate multinational mission sets out to explore a distant nebula in search of life-saving resources. The crews face not only division within the expedition itself, but an unexpected new threat, a fanatical alien race who will stop at nothing to eliminate outsiders. The Sojourn is an epic interstellar adventure grounded in a rich sci-fi universe inspired by the Age of Sail, told entirely through audio, with veteran voice actors, immersive sounds, and a sweeping original soundtrack. And their original, Faithless, is exclusively on Nebula right now. Nebula is a collection of conscientious creators, each with their own niche and speciality. Watching on Nebula directly supports the creator, and watching a bit late videos on Nebula helps me to make more videos. To get early access on Nebula First and access all of my videos without ads, please check out my links. go.nebula.tv/abitlate. You can get 40% off Nebula, or $36 per year, $3 a month. And you can go watch this new classic old story right now. And if you're already on Nebula, you can share guest passes with your friends so they can access it too for a full week. Or if you know they'll love Nebula, check out our monthly and yearly gift cards. Nebula has absolutely made a difference in me making these videos. And by signing up using my links, it makes it more possible. Thank you for being here and for checking out Nebula. But for now, off to sleep and dream what you will, or stay a while and enjoy another tale. Whichever you choose, I'll speak to you again, and until then,